Planets in the 12th house, do you have them? If you do, you might feel misunderstood. People with 12th house placements not only tend to feel misunderstood, they tend to be misunderstood. From the outside looking in, the more 12th house planets a person has, the more they might be judged by other people as being a recluse, not engaging with society, going into hiding. But the thing is, if you have planets in the 12th house, you need some time out to figure out that planet because it's naturally not going to be clear. And if you don't have 12th house planets, you can watch this video for planets in the sign before your sun sign or planets in the sign before your moon sign. So if your sun is in Aries and you have Jupiter in Pisces, you can watch Jupiter in the 12th. If your sun is in Virgo and you have Mars in Leo, you can watch Mars in the 12th. Same with your moon. If your moon is in Aquarius and you have Mercury in Capricorn, you can watch Mercury in the 12th house and just see if they resonate. But I could talk for a long time about why the 12th house is so misunderstood, but it does relate to things that are mysterious. You know, the 12th house in traditional astrology is isolated places. So what are isolated places? Well, monasteries, ashrams, places people go to get quiet retreats, meditation centers, temples, places where you go to be by yourself and meditate. That is a 12th house place. Prison, hospitals, jails, places where you are, taken away from your daily routine and your daily life or removed from society. Those are 12th house places. Does that mean every 12th house placement person goes to jail? Not always. Not always. Sometimes it's someone else in your life who has been in jail. Sometimes it's someone else in your life who has mental health challenges, real diagnosed ones, Sometimes it will be someone else in your life who has challenges with addiction or did go to actual prison. So since these are topics that show up in life, they're going to show up in the chart. But do not get all scared that you have 12th house planets and you're going to end up having bad things happen. Everyone has bad things happen sometimes. And the 12th house will sometimes be, 12th house activations by transit, for example, may describe times where bad things happen. They might. But there are some good sides to the 12th house, and we can get into the good sides of the 12th house without getting all psycho-spiritual crazy about it. Because the 12th house is isolation. It's the subconscious. It's things that we have to look hard to see. Okay, so the two things I use when I am trying to understand a planet in the 12th house is one, is that how is this thing hard for the person to see? And number two, how does the person do this thing behind the scenes, behind closed doors, in isolation? Sometimes whatever planet's in the 12th, you'd rather do that thing by yourself based on the nature of the planet. So that being said, let's get into what the different planets in the 12th house mean, starting with the sun. The sun in the 12th usually is going to bring strong intuition. It's going to bring a connection and a focus on 12th house topics. Some people, because the sun is your identity, it describes you and what you want to focus on. You want to focus on isolation or transcendence or the dark night of the soul or mental health issues or helping people who are in recovery from substance use or you're helping yourself do those things. The sun in the 12th house has a very, very strong focus on the inner self and has a private sense of identity. Not being seen can be a challenge for the 12th house sun, other suns too. But the 12th house sun might not only have the challenge of not being seen or not feeling like they are seen, sometimes they won't want to be seen. If it's your 10th house ruler in the 12th, you will work behind the scenes. So you have to think about what house in your chart the sun rules, what house in your chart has Leo on it, whatever that house is, you would rather do that thing in private. And that can show up in different ways. So let's say Leo is on your 7th house. Well, then you would rather get to know someone more privately, or maybe you don't want people up in your business when it comes to relationships. I mean, one of the sort of negative connotations here, if it's a 7th house ruler, is having secret lovers. And like, why? Well, because you're having an affair usually. But it can show up in a different way where your love life, certain aspects of your love life are behind closed doors. I'm not going to get into what that might look like. Sometimes you don't feel seen with that 12th house sun, but sometimes you would not want to be seen. So the artist who wants to do their art behind the scenes and maybe wants to bring attention to their art, but they don't want to be in the limelight. That could be a 12th house sun. The 12th house can be creative. It doesn't necessarily equal, creativity, but creativity is one expression of the 12th house. Why? Because in order to create, you got to be by yourself doing it. I mean, maybe people who create things in groups are not, we're not counting that for this. But if you're going to create a masterpiece, if you're going to write a symphony orchestra, or if you are going to make pottery, or you're going to create anything, you need to be able to connect to the muse and connect to that source of creativity. So even though creativity goes in the 5th house, sometimes we see 12th housey people who are very creative because they like to spend their time alone making shit or creating things or writing things or pondering or just, getting into some act of creativity. Okay, sometimes again, you can light up the darkness for other people with that sun in the 12th house, but this is why it can be hard to see, because when you are helping other people recover, or you're helping other people recover in any way, right? From like spiritual, physical, mental health, or otherwise kind of things. Well, you're not always seen in that process. If you help someone get sober, for example, they might recognize you and thank you and appreciate you, but you might not really be known for that, or if you are, you're known among the people who are in that field, which is still the 12th house. So shining in a 12th house place can be how this shows up. Another thing that the 12th house can have sometimes is spirit guides. So sometimes it's you connecting to your own spirit guide, you connecting to your own subconscious mind, you connecting to things that are beyond this realm, beyond this world. Sometimes it can be more on the imaginative side, but sometimes it can be more on the spiritual side. Another thing about the sun in the 12th is you're going to understand your goals better if you have time out and time to yourself. Whatever planet's in the 12th house, it's hard for you to connect with that thing. That thing might be a little more murky to you. You might not just have an easy time figuring it out. And the sun is like what we want to achieve. It's sort of like how we want to make our mark on the world in a way. And it's also our identity. So that can be your identity is tied up in 12th house things for good or for bad. But it can also be, number one, it's harder for you to see your own identity. It's harder for you to explain like who you are to people when you need to. So like if someone with the 12th house sun was trying to do branding, they might struggle with being able to describe who they are as a brand just because of that sort of murky, almost confusion around identity. Yeah, sometimes you will though understand your goals more deeply when you are in private. When you are by yourself or when you get time to yourself on a regular basis. Okay, so moving on to the moon. The moon in the 12th usually is going to be private with their feelings. They're going to need some time out to figure out how they feel about things. And in the most extreme case, if someone asks you how you feel, you might not just be able to randomly get an answer until you've reflected on that thing. And just time out might be what you need to do to take care of yourself, right? Whereas someone with, let's say, their moon in the 7th, they're going to need to connect with someone to feel taken care of. Someone with the moon in the 12th will need to disconnect, get quiet, go check out for a little bit and play video games or something else, and then come back refreshed. So someone with a moon in the 12th house will sometimes even feel refreshed if they are able to, get away from it all for a little bit and even maybe escape to some fantasy land for a little bit. Now, someone with the moon in the 12th may also like doing meditation or listening to music at home. There might be that sense of like, just kind of enjoying your life by yourself, enjoying the senses by yourself could be a very important thing for someone with a moon in the 12th. Yeah, this can also add sort of like a spiritual and dreamy aspect to the personality. But again, your emotions are something you're either going to want to do in private, like I don't know, like watching a movie and having a good cry. It's like you'd probably rather cry alone than with people when you have your moon in the 12th. You're going to want to feel your feelings and be emotional by yourself or with very, very close people, because you just don't necessarily need or want everyone knowing how you feel all the time. So it can be you needing to figure out how you feel and taking the time out. But it can also be you just desiring more privacy when it comes to your emotional life. For Mercury in the 12th, you're going to need time out to process your thoughts, to figure out how you think about things. You might enjoy writing, journaling, poetry, or other things that are private but involve words, listening to podcasts by yourself for a little bit, or contemplating. You might enjoy contemplating, journaling, writing the lyrics to a song, or writing something by yourself in isolation. You might enjoy reading by yourself, doing anything Mercury related behind the scenes. So we could expand that to some of the other parts of Mercury, which is like sales, right? So like maybe in some cases, the person could be a booking agent, or they could do some other kind of sales or email sending or something, but they do it behind the scenes and no one necessarily knows who they are, or they're not necessarily the one who's the face of the brand. They're the one behind the scenes doing the more administrative stuff. Mercury in the 12th can be doing administrative stuff behind the scenes, but it's probably not going to be every single one of these things. It's probably just going to be one of them. You're a deep thinker. You're going to want to think about things by yourself, and you probably can. It's almost like every time you ponder something, it's like going to the ocean and then you get something new, you get this new gem of wisdom or awareness by kind of maybe pondering the same thing over and over, or just pondering, contemplating. Now, sometimes with Mercury in the 12th, it does give like a broadness to the mind or a depth to the mind, but it can also sometimes make it hard for you to clarify what you think, or to know exactly what you think about something. And I'm not accusing you of anything bad. But maybe having a sense of confidence about what your thoughts are or what your opinions are or something like that may not come as easily, or may not be a strong character trait of yours if you have Mercury in the 12th, because it's like you don't even always know what you think sometimes, right? That's kind of what the 12th house planet does. It makes it so like you don't fully understand that until you take time out to really think about it. And then so for someone with Mercury in the 12th who's asking something like, well, if I have this problem, how do I fix it? Maybe actually journaling what you think about things or writing your opinion might support you, because once you've written it down, it helps solidify it a bit. So journaling how you feel might be good, but also just why you think what you think, especially if you're trying to have a brand, or like you're going into an interview, you'll be asked questions, like literally writing down the answers ahead of time might support someone with this placement if they're struggling with it, with having the confidence about what you think. Venus in the 12th. If you have, so Venus in the 12th house, one of the stereotypical things you'll hear is secret lover, because this puts your desire of what you want to receive, like Venus is what we want to receive, it's secret, right? It's in the 12th house, so it's secret. So secret lovers is one of the like possibilities. That's going to be a lot stronger if Venus rules your 7th house or your 5th house, or even your 8th house maybe. But what you like to do for pleasure, I am trying not to get gross here, is something private, okay? But that could be anything. It could be like you like eating sweets by yourself. It could be you like making perfume by yourself, right? Anything that Venus rules. But the overarching theme here is the things you enjoy are private things. And that could be innocent and PG-13, like watching movies by yourself or whatever, whatever you like to do. It might be something that you'd rather do in isolation, or maybe you love 12th house things, right? Venus in the 12th, maybe you love the 12th house, which would mean you love the depths of the human psyche. You love thinking about fears and overcoming them. You love exploring your subconscious mind and want to get all the hypnotherapy type sessions you can get. You might love altered states of consciousness. You might love Freud or Jung or anyone who's talking about psychology. You might love myth and stories and things that aren't quote unquote real, but still have value. You might enjoy that, like diving deep into yours or other people's psychological challenges, the mythology of things, the deeper, the tapestry that weaves humanity together through story and myth and these type of things. With Venus in the 12th, you may just be really into it. You might really love that. Okay, here's the challenge for people with Venus in the 12th sometimes, is that you don't know what you enjoy. For some reason, the things you enjoy are maybe even hidden from you. So this could show up as you need time out to figure out what your desires are, what your loves are, what your interests are. It could be that you have crushes on people and you don't get to be with them because they're married and you can't tell anyone. It could be that you don't know how to receive, and it's hard to receive, and the ability to just sit back and let life come to you is something that you find elusive and difficult and not easy to connect with. Now, the thing about the 12th house is the more time you've spent looking at this stuff, the less power it's going to have. And I'm reminded of that quote, who's it by? That until we make this subconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we'll call it fate. It's either Freud or Jung, I think. Venus in the 12th can be unrequited love. You love someone who doesn't love you back, but it doesn't have to be the whole story of your life. Relationships could take you into the 12th house. That means they could trigger psychological things. You could date people who introduce you to meditating, or you could find that your relationships bring you to bring up psychological fears that you then need to face in order to stay in the relationship or something. Relationships can also bring you in touch with really, really deep feelings about life, like your fears, but also your joys, which some people with Venus in the 12th could find that the things they enjoy are scary to them, or it's like, ooh, I'm afraid to like this person. I'm afraid to show my emotions. And then, that might be a comfort zone to learn to embrace a little bit. But overall, I would say Venus in the 12th means you'd rather be loved in private. So you might not want overt displays of affection. You might prefer that your partner show you affection in whatever way, sexual or non, behind the scenes instead of in front of other people. You might not like public praise or public, holding hands even or something like that. Okay, going on now to Mars. Okay, so for Mars in the 12th house, the challenge for Mars in the 12th, and I do think this one's slightly more challenging because the nature of Mars is so outward and the nature of the 12th house is so inward that they don't go together very well. So what does that look like for the person with Mars in the 12th house? Well, it looks like you fight with yourself because you don't want to fight with other people. You don't want to cause conflict in front of the scenes in life. Or you don't realize the need to fight until after the fact. So this can be someone who has an interaction with someone, goes home and is like, I should have got mad about that. I should have got mad about this. I should have got mad about this. And I should have told them, where you're literally getting mad by yourself. You are feeling your anger when you are alone, but maybe you either don't feel it when you are with someone or it's hard to express. This doesn't mean you can't express it, but that there might be a need to kind of learn how to, say no to people, set healthy boundaries, that kind of thing. It might not be easy. It might be something you have to really work to learn how to do. And really the 12th house Mars thing I really feel with it the most is fighting with the self. Now, you could fight with yourself about how you do stuff, how you handle stuff. There could be this natural tendency to be in a situation and then leave the situation and be like, man, you should have done this, like nitpicking yourself a bit, depending on what sign that Mars is in the 12th house. But really, internal conflict is the challenge of Mars in the 12th. Now, let's just say, for example, Mars rules your 7th house. Well, then this could describe your partners. At least one of your potential long-term partners could have a really bad temper. They could have an anger problem. They could have gone to jail. Usually it's not like spiritual and positive when it's Mars in the 12th. Usually it's more the fighting nature of Mars being in isolated places or private. So sometimes, again, this is suppressed anger or temper that you might even feel with Mars in the 12th that you don't get what you want, because instead of advocating for yourself, you don't say anything. Or like maybe because in public or in interactions with other people, you feel like you need to be more compassionate. And this can lead to being a little more on the passive side and then not knowing or not realizing when you should fight, like not knowing when you should speak up and say no about something, and then getting mad later. I'm just thinking of all the times I've done this. Okay, I'm going to give an example of Mars in the 12th here. You get offered a position. The position you're being offered sucks. You're not getting paid enough. Something is wrong with it. You know something is wrong with it, but you just say yes to it. And then later you quit the job because it sucked. Where it leads to this sort of almost passive aggressive behavior, right? Where instead of at that moment recognizing the need for conflict, recognizing the need for fight, and calling on that warrior within to say, no, I would love to take this position, but it needs to have X, Y, and Z. And if you did that, maybe there would be a different reaction. So instead of fighting when it made sense to, creating a conflict when it would be appropriate and healthy to do so, and then not having the conflict inside, instead, it's like letting that moment pass you by, and then later being all upset with yourself because now you're in a job that doesn't treat you very well. Now, just take that and apply it if it resonates to whatever area of your life that might show up for you. With this one, it means you have to look harder to see your own anger, which means maybe when you're mad, you won't connect with it. It doesn't mean you don't ever get mad, and it doesn't mean that you don't know you're angry. It just means it'll kind of sneak up on you when you're getting mad about something, or maybe the first time you get annoyed about something, it'll be harder to say something. Whereas if you said something, that situation created the conflict when it was a really small little seed, then it wouldn't grow up to a big seed. Okay, so for example, let's say you meet a friend and the friend starts complaining. Instead of recognizing it at that moment that I don't want friends who are complainers. And I can tell you this from observing other people, because I've met people who the second someone complains, they'll kind of dismiss it or deflect it. They will deflect it. Now, I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. It totally depends on everything. But the people I've met who deflect that, they don't have friends who are complainers because they know how to manage it when it's a teeny little seed instead of waiting until it's a huge snowball. So let me know, Mars in the 12th, if you relate to that. Also, Mars in the 12th can have a sexual side to it. When it comes to Mars, Mars can have a very sexual side to it. So what does Mars in the 12th mean for sexuality? Well, maybe you desire people, again, like Venus, desiring people you can't have. Preferring your sexual life be more private. Wanting, I don't think it's gross or anything, I don't think it's like bad sexual desires, but I think desire in general in the 12th, it doesn't like, how are you going to get what you want when your desire is hidden and it's secret? Well, maybe you're good at strategy. Maybe you're good at, like defeating your enemies without them even knowing you were there. But it might be harder to connect with your own instinctual desires because you feel like you're not allowed to have them. So like if you think someone's hot, are you like, man, they're hot? Or are you like, oh no, I'm not allowed to think that, right? So I guess in some cases, Mars in the 12th could be like that. It's more likely going to be, if it's going to show up sexually, it's someone who and it's like, most of us want to have sex in private, but there's something about it that is more private or more secretive or more, secret. So again, this could be not wanting people to know who you're having sex with, like just, oh, it's secret, don't tell anyone kind of a thing for no reason other than I want this area of my life to be super, super private. But it might not always be that way. It can just be the anger. It can just be the not being able to connect as easily to how you want to get what you want as well. Because, like the sun is our ability to see the focus on the goal. Mars is how we get what we want. And when it's in the 12th house, maybe sometimes you don't get what you want because the way you go about it is hidden from you. You don't even know how you're going about getting what you want. Or maybe there's a feeling like you're repressing that side because, maybe you are afraid that being that kind of person who just gets what they want is bad. Therefore, that side of myself can never show, kind of a thing. Okay, that's what I have for Mars. Jupiter in the 12th is like a guardian angel placement. So the downside of Jupiter in the 12th is that you don't see your Jupiter unless you look for it. If you have Jupiter in the 12th and you feel like you don't have blessings like other people, you do. They're just private ones. That if someone someone wrote a story about your life, no one would see the Jupiter. No one would see the blessings because it's like you pray and you get it. You pray and you get what you ask for. Or you have a passed over loved one who becomes a guardian angel and you connect with them all the time. Or you almost die. Or you almost have some crisis, but somehow it's almost as if the hand of God comes in and diverts the crisis. But you would only see that as a blessing or a miracle if you're looking for it. So that's the downside of Jupiter in the 12th. It's very easy to not see it. But the benefits Jupiter in the 12th gives is like a rich imagination, a rich spiritual life, a rich and deep connection to silent suffering. People who struggle with substance use issues or grief and loss or mental health stuff or the dark night of the soul on a spiritual level. Jupiter in the 12th usually can help those people or cares about that topic and has blessings in that area in some way. It might be you getting sober or you recovering from an accident where anyone else in the same situation would not have even lived, or you recover. And don't think that Jupiter in the 12th means you'll get in an accident. It does not. It does not mean that. But it's like you can connect to spirit. You can connect to God by yourself. You might prefer doing spiritual or religious activities where you're on your own. You might be the kind of person who wants to not go to church and feels like you want to meet God in nature and feels like you feel closer to spirit, or you feel luckier, or you feel happier when you get a little time to yourself, or you have privacy, or you have some kind of spiritual routine. Yeah, you might also also just really like to, it's almost like whatever your problem is, there's going to be some kind of spirit guide or some kind of solution that, like praying, talking to your higher power, talking to angels, connecting with whatever you believe in might actually be your preferred way to solve problems. It's like everyday problems have a spiritual or psychological solution. And that solution is one that you can find on your own. You have the power. So there's a lot of like power and strong intuitive capacity or potential with this placement because, or even not even intuitive as much as like, it's almost like you get more access to the spirit realm or something like that. So let me know, Jupiter in the 12th house people, do you relate to this? So now we're going to go on to Saturn in the 12th. Okay, so Saturn in the 12th is a little more of a serious one because Saturn is very serious and the 12th house is very serious. So the positive thing, if you have this in whole sign especially, is that Saturn has its joy in the 12th, which means it doesn't necessarily mean life is so good. I have Saturn in the 12th. Yay. It's not like that. Saturn likes being in the 12th because there's potential for isolation, which Saturn enjoys. Saturn enjoys it when you look at the consequences of your actions and you think about it and you take time out to contemplate it. Saturn enjoys it when you are spiritually mature and you're facing your demons. And the 12th house is kind of like where we keep our demons, where our demons are kept. We all have them. So facing your demons, it's almost like wherever you have Saturn in your chart is the area of life that you can't get away with cutting corners. Life will kind of force you to look at the problems in that house and deal with them. So if it's in your 3rd house, it's going to be your siblings and stuff. If it's in your 7th house, relationships will put you through that. But if it's in your 12th house, it's like, if you have psychological stuff or things you're afraid of, it will make Saturn very happy if you take a look at those things. And when you make Saturn happy, you don't necessarily get a bunch of good stuff. You just avoid some bad stuff. You avoid the negative consequences of not doing that, right? So like, if you don't speed, you don't get speeding tickets. And there's other stuff with Saturn that isn't simply what you did and your own consequences. Sometimes Saturn rules bad things that happen. Sometimes someone with Saturn in the 12th will have more experience with the topic of loss. They'll have a greater loss when they're young or at some point in their life. Whereas I wouldn't say if you have Saturn in the 12th and that hasn't happened that you have to be afraid of it. But it does sort of give, I don't like using super flowery language with Saturn, but sort of give opportunities to be silent, meditate, contemplate, do 12th house things. And if you have a 12th house problem, dark night of the soul, mental health, substance use, especially escapism, Saturn will make it harder on you. Okay, Saturn will punish you if you do those things. So if you feel like you are more punished for other people for just drinking when you were in high school and you're the only one who got arrested or something, you can thank Saturn for that. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but it really does give you more consequences of those type of things. Saturn in the 12th, sometimes I've also found it can make you feel just guilty, even if you're not guilty. So if you feel really guilty a lot and Saturn is in the 12th, that's something to really look at. Where does that come from? Is it appropriate guilt or inappropriate guilt? So Saturn will require you to address your hidden fears and escapism. If you have Saturn in the 12th and you have gotten sober, if you have recovered from a certain type of escaping, if you look at your fears regularly, you are right on track. The 12th house is so hard to pin down and Saturn rules your fear. So what are you afraid of? You don't know. Some nebulous, huge, very powerful, undefined thing. So how this can show up, if it's true, is sometimes someone with Saturn in the 12th will have this fear that that the hand of God or the universe is just going to wipe everything away, and there's no source to pin down where that comes from. Overall, Saturn in the 12th is good for things like taking responsibility and being emotionally mature. The downside of Saturn is that's because it forces you to do that, and you don't get to be off the hook, especially for more psychological, spiritual, or emotional problems. If you have Uranus in the 12th, it's like the way your subconscious mind communicates with you, or the way that you see your own self-sabotage, or the way that you see that deeper part of yourself that part of your life that contains the fears and the like psychological stuff, whatever it is, will come in flashes, will come at once. So Uranus is how it's about change, and it's sudden changes. The 12th house rules are psychological stuff we don't see. It rules our fears. So what are you afraid of with Uranus in the 12th? Maybe you're afraid of change. But with Uranus here, it kind of means the way that you're going to connect to your own psychology, the way that you're going to understand your deeper subconscious stuff is going to be all of a sudden, all at once, and then it shuts off again. Uranus is like an on and off switch. So one moment that psychic or psychological awareness is going to come in really strong, and the next moment it's gone. So this can also be through dreams, or just anything related to the subconscious can be more like sudden awarenesses. Just like lightning, really. It really is a lot like lightning. Okay. So then Neptune in the 12th. Now this one I would say is also kind of compatible here, because Neptune rules a lot of things that are exactly the same as the 12th house, in the sense that, suffering people, mental illness, addiction, these things all are ruled by Neptune, and they're ruled by the 12th house. It doesn't necessarily mean if you have it here, it's amazing and perfect, but they're a little more harmonious. So Neptune usually in the 12th might give you more compassion for people who have silent suffering. Neptune creates a softness because it kind of blurs the edges. So that might be a challenge when your own fears, the edges of your own fears are blurred. That's not good, because our own fears are already not easy to see, right? So that's one of the downsides, is that when you're in the 12th house and I just imagine the 12th house is like an ocean we go out to and we try to see what's in there. Neptune makes it foggy on the ocean. So when you do pull something up from your subconscious, you can't even see if you caught a regular fish or a dogfish and you need to throw it back. Put a comment below if you know what a dogfish is. They're like little sharks. Sometimes with Neptune in the 12th, let's see. Okay, this could make you feel like you just can't be bothered to do anything about the world's problems. This can also cause you, when you're considering your own psychological stuff, is you're just going to meander through that realm and be like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not be afraid of this. Ooh, shiny. So Neptune does do that to us wherever it is in the chart. It can make our process with that area of life, or our way of doing that area of life, more of a meandering path where we don't get anything done. Which is fine, because you don't have to be in the 12th house. You can live your whole life outside of it and be just fine. So the best case scenario for Neptune here would be that you can do creative work of all kinds. You can really tap into the flow, the flow of the 12th house. Not everyone with Neptune here will be a creative person. Not everyone with Neptune here will want to. But it could show up as Akashic Records, dream life, the subtle realm. And if the person wants to explore that, it softens it a bit, it softens it, makes it easier to go into other realms. And there could be a problem with that too, if you don't want to be going into other realms. So it just this one really depends. If you have Pluto in the 12th house, you should watch my video on Pluto in the 12th house because it's going to tell you a lot about the evolutionary standpoint on this. But overall, with Pluto, it brings kind of a root cause. With Pluto in the 12th, you probably could spend a lot of time figuring out the root cause of your fears. You might be obsessed with a 12th house topic, which would be substance use, addiction, recovery, mental health, spiritual modalities, especially the ones that take you out of this world, like QHHT that like hypnotizes you into your past life, or other spiritual topics that are specifically about transcending fears, but also discovering a root cause of a thing that is not necessarily physical, like a psychological root cause or an emotional or a past life root cause. You want to go to the source, the root cause of the psychological thing. But what's interesting about Pluto is Pluto buries. Okay, Pluto in the 12th house is really going to depend on what else you've got going on there. But like, if Pluto's with another planet there, that planet will be even harder to see because the 12th house is going to bury it and Pluto's going to bury it. So it's just like, it's down deep down in the earth for a reason. And sometimes you don't want to bring that stuff up. Like sometimes it's there for a reason, because why do we bury something? Because we can't deal with it right now, right? We just can't. Pluto in the 12th will probably make you more interested in the occult, being isolated, learning things by yourself, studying mysticism or spirituality, hypnotherapy, altered states of consciousness, things that are psychological in nature. Why? Because it opposes the 6th house, which is physical in nature. The 6th house is our chores and the shit we do all the time, and the stuff we got to do, and the stuff we got to take care of, and our work we got to go to, our schedule and everything. So Pluto in the 12th is like, you're going to be more drawn to that 12th house of mysticism, etc., etc. Okay, that's what I got for Pluto. If you want more on Pluto, go to my video on Pluto in the 12th. North Node in the 12th. You're going to be wanting to explore the depths of your psyche. And if the North Node is with a planet, you need to figure out what planet that is and what sign it's in. And I'm going to be doing videos on the North Node with planets. So eventually I'll have those. But you might have a need with North Node in the 12th to go into the 12th house. What does that mean? Meditate, explore the dynamics of your own soul, explore past lives, read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, learn about this aspects of the soul or the psyche that you're the most passionate about. North Node in the 12th is saying you're going to want to do this. You're going to need to do this. And like figuring out what is the root cause. It's going to be important. And if you want more on this, I actually have a video on the North and South Node through the houses as well. Okay, so going on to the South Node. With the South Node in the 12th, it's the opposite, where you need to kind of learn how to get out of the 12th house a little and not be too obsessed with the hidden cause, but actually connect with the physical everyday cause or doing a physical everyday thing. So if you're like, no, because the South Node in the 12th kind of means you won't want to do that. You'll want to explore find the psychological root cause of everything, but your life sort of balancing out mission, your life mission to be balanced out is to take the spiritual and bring it into the everyday, bring it into the mundane. The South Node in the 12th house means you need to get out of the 12th house and get into the 6th house and figure out what day-to-day things you need to do to be a happy, healthy person. And it doesn't mean you can't do mysticism or you can't do spirituality. It just means that you could stay in that 12th house trying to find that root cause forever and you're not going to find it. It's like that bottomless pit. And so figuring out what daily, everyday things make you happy, make you feel good. That's the North Node in the 6th house's lesson. How are you going to be of service? How are you going? What skills do you have? And what skills are you harnessing and fostering? That South Node will pull you back into isolation as a comfort zone, which is fine. But then you need to come back out of I want to say closet, but that's not what I really mean. But like come out of the bedroom or wherever you're hiding, the cave. The cave is the better word. Come out of the cave and do things that are good for you and good for others. That's the North Node in the 6th, or South Node in the 12th house. But you can watch my video on this South Node in it's called like North Node through the houses, and you can find more on that there. Okay, so now Chiron. If you have Chiron in the 12th house, this is a different thing. Okay, this is kind of its own special, unique thing. There's a wound. Wherever we have Chiron, there's a wound. Chiron in the 12th is the wound of transcendence/isolation. So sometimes people with Chiron in the 12th had spirit guides or a connection to the psychic or spiritual realms when they were a kid and they had to shut it down, or they, I don't know, prayed for something and it didn't happen. Some kind of wound like this. There could be something too when you're young where you're surrounded by spiritual people, and wherever we have Chiron, it's like we really, really want that thing, but we also really, really feel like we can't have it. So you want to connect with other realms. You want to go deep psychologically. You want to feel like you are understanding the reasons why people do the things they do and why you do the things you do. But it's like you will feel like there's something in life that happened that you feel like you can't have that, or you're not allowed to. You can still open that up again, but you'll have to work through that fear of not having the thing. It's like we have a complex wherever Chiron is. It's like you want the thing, but it's not safe to have it, or you want it, but you want it so bad that the idea of letting yourself want it is like, oh my God, I can't. It's too painful. So when you've worked through this Chiron a bit, you can bring things from the dream realm, from the subconscious realm into like the collective awareness. There is a gift with every Chiron, and the gift is helping people relate to the unseen in their life, because you're going to see it. You're going to see how the spirit guides helped. You're going to see all of that stuff that other people don't normally see. It's just going to be more obvious to you. And so the gift is being able to relay that to other people when it makes sense. And usually this Chiron also comes with this deep desire to transcend the suffering of the world, because there is this connection in the 12th house with people with 12th house planets. Sometimes they feel more aware of the world suffering. Sometimes it weighs on them more heavily. Sometimes they just kind of connect in with what the world needs and what the world feels and how the world is in pain. And they just can have this like deep desire to transcend that and a deep connection to it. So that's why it's the wound of transcendence/isolation, because it's like, it doesn't mean you're going to be stuck being isolated, or like, it's nothing like that. This is a invisible wound that most people with Chiron in the 12th wouldn't really dare even talk about how they feel about this stuff, because it's like, it's such a subtle energy and it's so hard to see that most people you try to talk to about it are just going to brush you off and say like, that's not even real, stop it, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I just want to affirm that if you have Chiron in the 12th, there usually is like a block or a wound to not feeling like you're connected to the whole universe, or not feeling like, I don't know, like your spirit guides are there when you're young, or they are there, but you're not allowed to talk to them, kind of a thing. It's more like that. Like there's a powerful source that you're not allowed to talk to. So this could be a kid who wants to do magic and their parents are like, no, that's evil. We're Christian, something like that. Or again, like you prayed as a child and the thing didn't happen. And so you feel that as a loss when you're super young, and it just makes it a little bit more like you don't necessarily trust when you have Chiron in the 12th, that if you go deep into your psyche, or that if you got a past life reading, that it would help you. Sometimes there's a wound to feeling like you could see how it could work for everyone else, but you might have a harder time seeing how that would work for you. Because that's what Chiron does to us. It helps us see and heal and help the other people with those problems. But for us, it feels impossible. So that's what I have for 12th house planets. Make sure you comment below. Oh, I have a video, you guys. I have a video on the 12th house. If you want a reading from me on your 12th house, I have videos on this topic available. They're only available until November 4th, so make sure you get it now. If you're watching this after and you missed it, just check the pinned comment in the comments, and any offering I have related to the 12th house will be there that I do in the future. Okay, so I'll see you beautiful souls in the next video. Bye guys.